Sorry about that, guys. They came into vacuum. So the question number 1 says, tell whether the indicated angles are adjacent. So EFG is EFG, so they're talking about this angle right here. I'm going to circle angle F. And then HGF is HGF, so G is the letter in the middle, so I'm going to circle that one because they're talking about that one right there. So what they want to know is if these two angles are adjacent. Adjacent means that they have to have a side in common. So this side is in common because this is a side on both of the angles, but they also have to have the same vertex. This vertex is F, this vertex is G, so you would conclude that these two angles are not adjacent to each other. They're next to each other, but they're not adjacent to each other. In the second example, JNM, so they're talking about this angle up here, and then MNK, they're talking about this angle over here, so you don't even have to look at this bottom part of the picture at all. JNM and MNK both have N as their vertex, and they share ray NM in common, and so you would conclude that yes, these two angles are adjacent to each other. So adjacent doesn't just mean they're next to each other. It means they have to have the same vertex and they have to have a side in common. All right. In example number 2, it says name a pair of complementary angles, a pair of supplementary angles, and a pair of vertical angles. So what this question is really doing is it's having you practice the definitions. Complementary angles are angles that add up to 90 degrees. So when we look at this picture, let's see. Well, there's a couple different ways that we could set it up. You know what, guys, I'm going to have you do cross out vertical angles right here. I'm going to have you just name a pair of complementary angles and for this one, and then I'm going to have you just name a pair of supplementary angles for this one, because it's a lot to try to fit in each one. So for this one, we're going to name one pair of angles that are complementary, and then for this one, we're going to name one pair of angles that are supplementary. So we'll make it be a little bit more straightforward. So complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. So let me start by saying that for this picture, there's a bunch of different angles that you could pick. The little box that's on the picture right here means that this angle itself is 90 degrees. But they don't want me to list two angles that are already 90 degrees. They want me to list two angles that add up to 90 degrees. So there's two ways that you could answer this question. You know that anytime it's a straight line, let me cover up this part with my hand. Anytime it's a straight line, you know that it's 180 degrees. So if this piece right here is 90, that means that you would have 90 left over to split between these two. So this angle and this angle would be complementary. But you could also do the same thing on the other side of the picture. I could cover up this part down here. And so if that part with the box right here is 90 degrees, I know a straight line is always 180, so that means that there would be 90 degrees to split between these two angles. So it doesn't matter which angle you give, which angle pair you give, but notice that they want it to be a pair because you have to have two angles to be complementary. So I'm going to say angle MON, which is this angle right here, MON, and then I'm going to say angle NOP. Make that look a little more angly for you. But so angle NOP is this angle NOP right here. So if the one angle right here, LOM, if that one's 90 degrees, and if these three make a straight line, that means that you have 90 degrees left over to split between these two, which means they would have to be complementary. For this one, they want to know two angles that are supplementary. It does say they want a pair. So I could say this angle, and this angle are supplementary, but a pair means that they want there to be only two. So when I look at this picture, I'm trying to find two angles that are going to make a straight line. And so I see only one, no, I see two. There's two ways you could answer this question. If you cover up this part of the picture, this angle right here and this angle right here are a linear pair. They make a straight line, so they would equal 180. But I could also cover up this part of the picture, and then this angle right here and this angle right here would also make a straight line, so they would be a linear pair, and they would add up to 180 degrees. So when you answer this question, it doesn't matter which pair you give, whether you give these two or whether you give these two, but either way they're a straight line. So when I answer this one, I'm going to say angle DGC. DGC is this angle right here, and then it doesn't matter which one I give. I'll give angle BGC, which is that angle right there. So these two angles make a straight line, and so they would add up to be 180 degrees. In this picture for complementary, I'm going to go back I'm going to like color it in. I think that that's a nice way to show you which two angles are adding up to give you 90 degrees. And then in this picture, I picked these two on the bottom. So I'm going to do the same thing on this one. And I'm going to like color in, sure, I'll color in those two angles. Just so that you see that 90 degrees makes the box, it's the corner, and then 180 degrees makes a straight line. So in the definition of complementary and supplementary that we wrote down up above, we said that we knew complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So I'm going to circle the word complementary, and I'll write 90 degrees up above it. And so if there are two angles that are complementary, and if you know that one of them is 82 degrees, you can use subtraction to figure out what the other one is. Remember, the little m that's out front stands for measure. So if I know that this angle is 82, and if they want me to figure out what's the angle that's complementary to this, I can subtract these two numbers. So if angle 1 is 82 degrees, that means that the measure of angle 2 would be just 8 degrees. So if this angle is almost all the way to 90, this angle would be a really small angle to be the complementary angle to this. If the measure of angle 1 was 23 degrees, then I could still use subtraction. The measure of angle 2 in this new example would be 67 degrees. So this angle is a little bit, it's smaller than 82 was, so this angle has to be bigger than this one was to add up to 90 degrees. So basically it's just these two numbers add up to 90, and then these two numbers add up to 90. And then number 4, it looks like I copied and pasted the question. You might also get tricked into thinking that it was the same question, but it's actually not the same question. This one right here says that they're supplementary, and supplementary angles are different because they're angles that add up to 180 degrees. So you really want to make sure that when you're doing this, you're careful about reading the word in the directions to the question. So supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180. So I can use the same approach. I just have to use 180 as my number. If the measure of angle 1 is 82 degrees, then the measure of angle 2, for it to add up to 180, I would subtract these two numbers, and I would get that it's 98 degrees. And then in this example, if the first angle is 105, that means that the second one has to be 75 degrees. So again, you're doing this one minus this one, or just thinking about what two numbers you would add together to give you this one back. So that's a little preview of complementary and supplementary angles. Notice that we haven't done any solving yet with the angles. And so on the back of the notes, what we're going to focus on are several times where there's actually equations that we have to solve to find out answers to these questions.